How's it going, folks? So I see the topic of civil war is trending, and I'm normally hesitant to talk about this topic. This is a very sensitive topic. It's a very complex topic, and it's not something that does need to get thrown around just so cavalierly, so to speak. I'm going to chime my 2 cents in on this one. I'm going to start off with paraphrasing Bill Maher. Bill Maher seems to think a civil war would not happen, precisely because the battle lines will be drawn through Nana's kitchen. Um, that's not going to stop a civil war from happening if it does, but I do think he's correct that the next civil war this country has, the battle lines are probably going to be drawn through Nana's kitchen, which makes the situation a bit more complicated than the previous Civil War, where people were fighting in professional armies, and it was professional army versus professional army. This Civil War, should it happen, the way I currently see it, it's not going to be professional army versus professional army. It's going to be a lot of non-regular fighting. And anybody who's claiming that this is going to be one-sided and it's going to be like over in a day or a week or a month, I don't quite think you know what you're talking about, and I don't think you know enough to know you don't know what you're talking about. This is going to be one of those things that gets drawn out. It's going to be ugly. And it's not going to be professional soldier on professional soldier. There might be some professional soldiers that get involved. In fact, most likely will be. But it's not exactly going to turn out how a lot of people think. And, well, let's start out with the people on the right who are probably going to be more the types to think that, well, the people are going to rise up against the government, and that might be true. And at the end of the day, depending on the circumstances, those people might eventually be victorious, though there's a lot of variables involved. It's not going to be over in a day. And that victory is not going to be one of those super clear-cut victories either. And for those of you who think that an armed populace rising up against our government won't stand a chance and it'll be over in a day too, because the government will use drones, nukes, and airstrikes and tanks, well, you also don't know what you're talking about. First off, on the nuke thing, if I have to explain that to you, your IQ doesn't exceed room temperature, and you probably should shut up. But, light example, you use nukes on your neighbor that's standing up against you, well, you'll kill yourself and your neighbor. Moreover, now you have to think about what the rest of the world is going to do, because the rest of the world is going to look at that and say, this regime is using nuclear weapons on their own people. They're probably not going to hesitate to use nuclear weapons on us. So maybe it's best that we hit them at their most vulnerable point while they've got a civil war going on in their country. So those are just two reasons as to why the government using nukes to put down a rebellion, an insurrection, or whatever you want to call it here, would be a bad idea. Would the airstrikes and drones and tanks, while they're not going to be ruled out, there's only so many UAVs. Really the term you're looking for when you say drone. Um, there's only so many aircraft we have, and there's so many tanks we have. And it might not be the best option to use them. And again, you don't stop insurgencies simply by shooting your way through it. There's a lot of other things that go into it. And furthermore, you don't win insurgencies by shooting your way through it, too. So, yeah, there are a lot of different things that go into this. But let's take drone strikes and airstrikes, for example. Because there is something that needs to be said to all these people who don't think that they're going to be any sort of target because they're not a combatant and the government will do all the fighting for them. Let me ask you this. You're sitting in that coffee store, you're sitting in the restaurant, talking about how the government, just bombed a bunch of right-wingers yesterday and killed a bunch of them. And what you don't know is that guy sitting at the other table there was one of those right-wingers that wasn't in the spot where the bombs were going off, but his wife and kids were. What that right-winger has hiding on him is one of these. Of course, he's got it tucked under his clothes, so you can't see it. You think that right-winger, hearing you say that, is going to go, well, I don't like what they're saying, but they're not combatants. I can't shoot them. Well, all's well that ends well. Or do you think that person is going to say, aha, motherfucker, you want to laugh about my wife and kids dying? Well, you're my enemy. I don't care that you got a gun or not. You and your friends are going to die. I'm willing to bet the latter is probably going to be the more likely scenario that comes out of that. So just because you don't yourself have a rifle and you're not yourself participating in a fighting doesn't mean that you're not going to be a target either. I mean, you said it yourself, drone strikes and airstrikes. People's unarmed wives and kids are going to get killed in this, and that's perfectly acceptable for you. So what makes you think that you're in any position to say, well, I'm not armed, don't kill me. I'm not fighting, don't kill me. It doesn't work that way. Now, and I'm not advocating for any of this stuff. I'm just telling you what the reality of the situation is. And that's one such way this stuff can go. I mean, if 5 million people decided that they were going to wage a guerrilla campaign against the government with black rifles like this, there's a lot of damage they can do. And there's a good chance they're going to be using more than just rifles like this, if they have any clue about what they're talking about. And there are a million different ways that people could wage a guerrilla campaign against the government. And it's going to make your lives incredibly miserable too. So this is why you probably shouldn't be chomping at the bit for a civil war to happen. This is probably why you should not be so cavalier about this. Just period. And this is probably why you should be getting on your politicians saying, hey, look, things are getting a little heated. Let's kind of wind this back a little bit. Let's de-escalate this situation so it doesn't go to becoming a civil war. And this is something that one side cannot do on their own. What you really do need to be talking about, you know, is how are you going to get these politicians to back the fuck off? How are you going to get some of these media personalities to back the fuck off? And how are you going to de-escalate? Prime example, what I'm going to use for an example here is that COVID amnesty thing. I can tell you right now, these people who are calling for the COVID amnesty, they're not making any sort of effort to do any sort of de-escalation. All they're doing is saying, oh, well, we know we were wrong then, but just forgive us. And we don't have any plans on doing anything to either rectify the situation. And in the future, we plan on doing the same thing again because we don't want to do anything to change that. We just want you to let what happened to you go for now. And that's pretty much been their mentality. Well, that's not de-escalating the situation. Not at all. And the fact of the matter is that, I don't know when, how, or if a civil war is going to kick off in this country. All I can tell you is that if a civil war does kick off in this country, it's going to be ugly. It's not going to be pretty, and it's not something anybody wants. So, for everybody who's sitting there talking about it so damn cavalierly, I think you need to take a step back and rethink what you're saying. Because it seems like there's quite a few people with this cavalier attitude over it. So, I'm going to leave it at that. Folks, you have the conversation in the comments that you can start and continue it. And maybe if somebody brings up some pertinent points in the comments, I'll make another video discussing this, or I might just respond in the comments. But just so you know, I do watch the comments and I do read what the comments say, and I listen to what people have to say, regardless of whether or not I agree with them. But thank you all for watching. You all take it easy out there and have a great day.